A Delhi judge today took cognizance of the defamation case filed by MJ Akbar against journalist Priya Ramani. It was Ramani's account against Akbar that sparked off a series of sexual harassment allegations against him. However, the court rejected the former minister's move to submit his statement in court in writing. They said he will have to appear in person on the 31st of October. Well-known lawyer Geeta Luthra represented Mr Akbar along with a lawyer from the high-powered Karanjiwala firm. His defamation suit is 41 pages long, and Ms. Luthra argued in court that Priya Ramani's tweet about Akbar was defamatory, lowering his reputation, and that it is years and years after she claims that this even took place. But importantly, today there was an Editors Guild statement that was issued in which the Editors Guild urged MJ Akbar to withdraw the defamation case. They said that we hope Akbar will display the grace to withdraw the case. It would be paradoxical for a veteran editor to employ the instrument of criminal defamation, but that if he doesn't, or in case he files such cases against other women too, the Guild offers its support to them and would actually look for any legal advice or assistance and appeal to eminent lawyers to represent them pro bono. So a pretty strong statement coming there from the Editors Guild. And joining us tonight, Supreme Court Advocate Karuna Nandi, Suhasini Eder, who's the diplomatic editor of The Hindu, and Aarti Jarath here with us in the studio. Suhasini, to you first. It is clearly seen, this defamation suit, isn't it, as a tactic of intimidation. Yes, it's something that the Supreme Court did hold up, but it is something that has been used not just against the media, but, you know, against political parties, activists. We are seeing other media groups running from pillar to post because of suits like this. So it is important today that the journalist fraternity, the media fraternity, has stood out in strong support of Priya Ramani and urged MJ Akbar to actually withdraw this case.
Absolutely, Nidhi. And, you know, criminal defamation is something that, as you said, the Supreme Court has already held is constitutional. To continue to hold it as a criminal charge against, against a defamer. But the truth is that there are grades and grades of this. And when a public personality, someone like Mr Akbar, who the Guild points out has been a president of the Guild before, has been an editor himself, and faced this kind of harassment, when a public personality chooses to use criminal defamation against a journalist, it is nothing but a tool of harassment, because he does have recourse. If he was to give an interview, if he was to try and counter the charges, if he was to try and make his defense, he could easily do that without even going to the court, let alone going for criminal defamation. So there is a reason why the Editors Guild has pointed out to Mr Akbar that this has been always regarded as a huge setback to free speech in the country. Most countries around the world have done away with criminal defamation. And the truth is that if a journalist or a former journalist chooses to use it, even though he is a public personality, I mean, he was a minister till 2 days ago, then it really is seen as a tool of harassment. And I think that is the point they're trying to make.
Well, Karuna, if you could explain to us legally, the difference between civil and criminal. Essentially, criminal invites a jail term, and that's why it's being seen as an intimidation tactic. The Supreme Court didn't think it infringed in any way on free speech. But is there any way to revisit that? Is there any way to file a review petition, or if the political class wants to change the law?
Nidhi, let me declare at the outset that I was one of the people that was arguing to strike down criminal defamation as a law before the Supreme Court on behalf of the representatives of Greenpeace. Now, the thing is that after the Subramaniam Swamy judgment and after the criminal defamation provision was upheld, we said that, look, there is an aspect of it that is that remains, that has not been addressed, which is that companies should not be able to bring criminal defamation. And we had also discussed before the court the possibility of, sending it to a 5-judge bench, because of course that was a period, and that period continues to some extent, where the government itself was saying that where there is a constitutional issue, and in accordance with Article 145, that important constitutional issues should go to a 5-judge bench. And that is something that the then Chief Justice was not particularly keen on, but he said that he would listen to the aspect of corporates not being able to bring criminal defamation. Now, so there is, I think, cause for a 5-judge bench to revisit the issue, but that is something that's not happening yet. There's no reference. Let's see what happens. In terms of the difference between civil and criminal defamation, now the criminal defamation is a particularly ridiculous law, and let me tell you why. The difference between civil and criminal defamation is that truth is a defense to both, but for criminal defamation, the speaker needs to demonstrate truth and the public interest. So, which is kind of bizarre, because it means that it's easier to sue someone under criminal defamation than it is under civil defamation. Now, here in this case, the public interest, I don't think there's any doubt about the public interest. So that difference is doesn't really matter. The trouble, of course, in criminal defamation is that the first MJ Akbar will bring his, will make his statement and the court will go into it, and only at the time of defense, only at the time of post summons, if the court issues summons, and I think everyone's presuming that the court is going to issue summons, which is not necessarily the case. In some cases they don't, but if they call Priya to put her case, that is the stage where she will be able to demonstrate truth. Yeah. Which is very problematic, right? Because only at that late stage as a defense can you demonstrate that this is something that happened and that there shouldn't be a criminal case against me.
I think you've articulated that very well about why this law actually
as a lot of people
so
know,
skewed.
I'm sure you know.
It's so skewed. No, I just want to ask Aarti then, which is why actually, even though we know that criminal defamation suits are often used as tools of harassment, it did not deter other women from speaking out against MJ Akbar even after he did that on Monday.
No,
I mean, it had the opposite effect.
Absolutely. I'm so proud of our fraternity because we have demonstrated, I think, an incredible solidarity here. And it's not just women. The number of male journalists who have come out in support too, journalist organizations, Editors Guild. I mean, these are composed of men and women. So I think this is, this cuts across the gender divide. I think it's an issue that concerns all of us in the media, and I think we're all in it together, and I think that is one of the reasons why MJ Akbar suddenly did a volte-face in 24 hours and decided to resign, because it was actually pitting the media against the government, or the government against the media, and no government can afford that on the eve of an election, to have the entire media banned against them. So this solidarity has been amazing, and they thought that they would intimidate the media by filing this criminal defamation case, but it hasn't.
It had
worked.
The opposite impact.
It hasn't worked at all.
It's raised also.
It miscalculated badly.
This entire Me Too movement, Suhasini, has also raised important issues for all of us in the organizations in which we work, and whether it's the media, the corporate industry, advertising, etc. Do you think that this will actually force organizations to look at their internal mechanisms more seriously, that this is perhaps going to be the lasting impact of this version of Me Too?
Nidhi, I do want to make the point that the reason many of us are so disappointed with the way the government has behaved over this case of Mr. MJ Akbar is twofold. One is, of course, as you pointed out, that here is a case where somebody has been accused. The charges are extremely serious. He's been accused by so many women that, and all of these unrelated to each other in a sense. Some of them haven't even worked at the same time. That it should have been prima facie a case where the government should have stood up and said, you know what, this is a case where we will show the world, we will show India how such cases should be dealt with. MJ Akbar is a minister. These may have been acts done before his time as minister, but we will show what procedures should be laid down. What is the systemic response to a case like this? Instead, the government has chosen to bluster. Shows like yours, I've been on all week. I have not found anyone coming out to give the government's point of view. Nobody has defended Mr. Akbar, but nobody has also explained what is the government actually prepared to do. They have made it off the record. They have made it that it is his personal case. Is it really a personal case when a public official, one who represents India, is accused of this kind of sexual harassment not once but multiple times? Is it really a personal case when you say that there is an agenda against me and the government says nothing? The government in fact seems to be backing Mr. Akbar until the moment that he resigned. Otherwise he would not have been attending office the way he did on Monday and Tuesday. What I'm trying to say is this is not personal. In fact, it is not just about Mr. Akbar. It is about a system. And the government had a perfect opportunity at a time when this movement had picked up steam, where women were coming out and speaking across media, across corporate lines. This was the perfect opportunity for the government to show what they were willing to do when it came to someone who was within their ranks. And instead they chose to hide, they chose to make it personal, and now have said nothing as their minister puts a criminal defamation case against one of the accusers. Remember, there are close to, I think, more than 20 now. It puts a criminal defamation case against a journalist, knowing full well that he has the backing of a very, very large establishment behind him. So,
he's still a part of the BJP.
I do want to make the
point that,
yes,
he's still very much a part of the ruling party, and he's still a member of parliament. And he's still a member of parliament.
Absolutely, and you know, and really, that's why I want to make the point that not only should this have had a salutary effect, because what are we asking for? At the end of the day, Me Too is not going to change the world because everybody suddenly sees everyone being taken to court or everyone having a criminal complaint. The effect is going to be that people are going to become educated about their rights as well as what their role in an office is, what their responsibilities are. That cannot come unless the government takes a systemic response.
But,
and I'm afraid I'm extremely disappointed.
No, that's very well articulated by you. And taking off from that, Karuna, what also surprised me in the course of these last few days was the revelation, which, and I honestly didn't know that this was the case, that our political parties don't follow the Vishakha guidelines. They don't have internal complaint committees to deal with sexual harassment complaints. That came forward when the NSUI case was brought up, and now we have Menaka Gandhi today talking about the fact that political parties will need to do this. But it is astounding that our major political parties do not have these systems in place, whereas the rest of us are supposed to be complying with them, and some have done it successfully, some not so much.
This is the point that I brought up in the beginning of this, when these conversations started happening. And a BJP spokesperson said, actually, we do have an ICC. To which, of course, I said, who are the members? And he started Googling it, and of course, there is no ICC, and he couldn't find it. So there's a sort of combination of brazen lying and cover-ups and apathy that happens across sexual assault by senior members and by sort of politically elected members of the Bharatiya Janata Party. If you look at, the thing is that the expectation that there would be anything different regarding MJ Akbar is because I think there were a lot of powerful, relatively powerful people sort of calling for his resignation and calling for proper systems, as Suhasini said quite rightly. But if you look at Kuldeep Singh Sengar, look at how egregious that was. And look at the fact that not only was this man accused of this absolutely, brutal rape, but also then the murder of the father, of the woman who was raped in Unnao. If you look at Kathua and the fact that the BJP ministers were supporting the rapists, then I think the expectation that it will be anything different is not really an expectation I had. But one thing that was a little bit galling, I must say, was the fact that in MJ Akbar's resignation, he essentially tried to whitewash his stepping down as, and he was allowed to do that as Minister of State. And he said that, because I'm pursuing it, through legal means, I'm not going to remain. Just like it was some big act of magnanimity, which I just think is absolutely ridiculous that he was allowed to do that.
Which brings me to one last question to Aarti.
They should have immediately set up ICCs.
Well, I mean, that's why I said to me it's astounding that no major political party in this country has those systems in place. I mean, when the NSUI case, for instance, happened, they set up some ad hoc committee at the last minute, scrambled some 3 people together to look at that, and now he had to, go. But Aarti Jairath, quick class question. Actually, Suhasini raised this point very importantly about MJ Akbar's influence. He's still a member of the BJP.
Least they did that.
He's still an MP.
If they set up the Vishakha, the POSH committees,
well, I think they frankly forced him to resign because there was so much outrage on television over MJ Akbar that they wouldn't have had a face with which to ask for MJ Akbar's resignation. But this point that can he still be a member of parliament? I mean, this raises some very vital questions. He's still a very powerful man.
Of course. But then he's
not a minister. But
we have 17 MPs who are accused of rape in parliament right now. And they're all MPs. And they're all facing rape charges. So, I mean, why MJ Akbar? What about all these people? I mean, it looks very depressing. But I would like to say, listen, while it is very depressing, and of course the government's reaction has been absolutely, depressing, as Suhasini said very, very well. But, I do feel, I mean, there is a positive side to this. And the positive side I see is that firstly, I think people have realized how endemic this harassment is of women in the workplace, not just in media organizations, but across the board. And I don't think people actually realized, how bad it was. So to that extent, the issue has really come into focus. The second is that I think there's been outrage amongst women, of course, because we bear the brunt of it. But there is a section of men that is backing us. And at the end of the day, the workplace is still skewed in favor of men. They occupy positions of authority. They are the decision makers. So if we can get men on our side, to back us, then maybe we can actually start looking at some, institutional mechanisms, institutional safeguards to ensure the safety and security of women in the workplace. So it's a start. I mean, it's a long battle ahead, but it's a start. So I think we should be a little optimistic about it.
No, certainly. And I think it's also been great that, as I said, the media has really rallied around and come together to support Priya Ramani in this. And we do all support her very much in this battle. Thank you to all of you for joining us tonight on this important issue. Like I said, MJ Akbar may not be a minister anymore, but this is an important case, and that this is one that we will continue to track very closely. See you again tomorrow night. Goodbye.